Okay, so you want to own a dry cleaner. It seems like a solid, boring, dependable little business. People need clean clothes. They drop off their suits and dresses, you clean them, they pick them up and pay. It's a cash-generating neighborhood fixture that's been on the same corner for decades. Recession-resistant, simple, steady. What could possibly be complicated about it? As it turns out, almost everything. Because the dry cleaner is one of the most misunderstood businesses in America, and it hides two secrets that completely flip the way you should think about it. The first secret is that the shop you walk into might not actually be a dry cleaner at all. And the second secret is far more dangerous. The most valuable looking thing you could own in this business, the real estate, might actually be a financial trap that could cost you millions of dollars. This is a business where owning the land, the thing that makes almost every other business rich, can quietly destroy you. By the end of this video, you'll understand both of those secrets. You'll understand why this industry has been slowly dying for 30 years. And you'll understand why, despite all of that, it's strangely one of the most artificial intelligence-proof businesses left in America. Let's start with the first secret, the shop that isn't a shop. When you walk into your neighborhood dry cleaner, you probably picture the machines humming away in the back, your shirts being cleaned right there behind the counter. And sometimes that's true. But a huge portion of the storefronts you see aren't cleaning anything at all. They're what the industry calls drop stores, or agencies. It's a counter, a cash register, and racks of clothes. That's it. What actually happens is that your clothes get bagged up, driven miles away to a central wholesale plant, cleaned there in bulk alongside the clothes from a dozen other storefronts, sometimes even competing storefronts, and then driven back. The shop you trust with your favorite suit is, functionally, a pickup desk. It's the front end of a business whose actual work happens somewhere you'll never see, and this completely changes the economics. Running a drop store is cheap. You don't need the expensive machines, the boilers, the industrial build-out, or the environmental permits. You just need a lease, some racks, and a relationship with a wholesale plant that does the real work for a cut. So when you think about owning a dry cleaner, the very first question is, are you buying the actual factory or just the counter out front? Because they are completely different businesses with completely different costs and completely different risks. And whoever owns it, there's a good chance of one thing. It's a family business run by immigrants. The American dry cleaning industry has, for decades, been dominated by Korean American families. In some major cities, at points, around 80% of dry cleaners were Korean-owned. It became a classic immigrant on-ramp, a business you could buy, run with your family, and build a life around, often bringing sewing and alteration skills that explain why so many cleaners also do tailoring. It's one of the great, quiet entrepreneurial success stories in America, but it's also a big part of why the industry's problems hit so hard, because these are small, family-owned operations with thin margins and little cushion, not deep-pocketed corporations. And speaking of thin margins, the actual economics are tougher than they look. A dry cleaner's costs are dominated by two things people don't think about: labor and energy. This is hands-on work, so labor eats up a huge share of revenue, and it's shockingly energy-intensive. Those boilers and presses run on heat and steam all day long, so utility bills are brutal. Add in rent, chemicals, and insurance, and the typical net profit margin often lands somewhere in the low double digits, if that. This was never a get-rich-quick business. It's a grind-it-out, know-your-numbers business. And speaking of risk, this is where the second secret comes in, and it's a big one. For most of the businesses we take apart on this channel, the golden rule is, own the real estate. The land is where the real wealth is. The barbershop owner who buys his building, the laundromat owner who owns the lot. Owning the ground underneath your business is almost always the smartest long-term play. The dry cleaner is the one business where that rule can ruin you. Because for decades, the dominant chemical used to clean clothes was a solvent called perchloroethylene, known in the industry simply as PERS. At its peak, around 80 to 85% of American dry cleaners used it. It's extremely effective at cleaning fabric. It is also a likely human carcinogen, and it does not break down in the ground. It seeps. Over the years, tiny amounts of perc spilled and leaked at dry cleaning sites all over the country, and that perc soaked into the soil and then into the groundwater, forming underground plumes of contamination that can spread hundreds of feet and last for decades. By some estimates, around 75% of all dry cleaning sites in America have caused some form of contamination. Now here's why that's a financial nightmare. If you own the property under a contaminated dry cleaner, you can be on the hook for cleaning it up. And cleaning up a perc plume is staggeringly expensive. We're not talking about a few $1,000s. Regulators have estimated that investigating and remediating a single contaminated site can cost anywhere from $500,000 to over $10 million for one site. Think about what that means. You could buy a modest dry cleaning business for a few $100,000, feeling smart for acquiring the real estate too, and then discover a toxic plume beneath your feet that costs 10 times the value of the entire business to clean up. This is why any experienced buyer will never purchase the land under a current or former dry cleaner without extensive environmental testing first. The dirt itself is the liability. It's the exact opposite of every other business we've looked at, where the dirt is the prize. Some states were so overwhelmed by this that they set up special taxpayer-funded trust funds just to help clean up contaminated dry cleaner sites. A quiet, multi-billion-dollar public subsidy for the mess this one small industry left behind. So between the drop store illusion and the toxic land trap, you might be wondering why anyone owns one of these at all. And that brings us to the hardest truth about this business. It's been slowly dying for 30 years. Think about how people dressed for work in the 1980s and 90s. Suits, ties, pressed dress shirts, blazers, an entire professional uniform that had to be dry cleaned constantly. That was the golden age of the dry cleaner. And then, piece by piece, it went away. Business casual arrived in the 90s. Then came wrinkle-free and washable performance fabrics. Then athleisure. And then the knockout blow, the pandemic and the shift to working from home. When millions of people stopped going into offices, they stopped needing their shirts pressed. Almost overnight. The numbers tell the story. The count of dry cleaning businesses in America has fallen dramatically over the past 2 decades. By one government measure, the number of these establishments dropped from over 27,000 in 2001 to around 16,000 by 2022. When the pandemic hit, many cleaners saw their sales collapse by 80 to 90%, almost instantly, and roughly 1 in 6 shut their doors for good. So the honest picture is a business in long structural decline, squeezed between falling demand and rising costs for rent, energy, and increasingly strict chemical regulation. In fact, the government is now phasing out perc entirely, giving the industry about 10 years to eliminate it, which means every cleaner still using it faces expensive equipment changes just to keep operating. The industry does have a path forward here. Cleaners are switching to alternatives. Everything from hydrocarbon solvents to a water-based process called professional wet cleaning, which the environmental regulators actually prefer. But switching isn't free. New machines and retraining cost money that a struggling small shop may not have, so the transition is uneven. And for some owners, it's the final straw that pushes them to just close instead. But here's the twist, and it's the reason this business isn't going to zero. For all its problems, the dry cleaner turns out to be one of the most artificial intelligence-proof businesses in America. And that's worth sitting with for a second, because right now everyone is worried about AI coming for their jobs. Well, AI is not coming for the dry cleaner. Think about what the job actually involves. Sorting delicate garments by hand, identifying and treating a specific stain on a specific silk blouse, operating a heavy industrial press, steaming a wedding dress, handling, inspecting, and finishing thousands of individual, delicate, physical objects. None of that can be done by a chatbot or a piece of software. It requires human hands, human eyes, and real physical skill in a physical place. While AI is reshaping law, coding, and finance, it does essentially nothing to the person pressing a suit. In a strange way, the very thing that makes dry cleaning feel old-fashioned, all that physical manual labor, is exactly what makes it safe from the technology everyone else is scrambling to survive. The threats to this business are real, but they are demand, regulation, energy, and rent. They are not automation. So let's answer the question we started with. Should you own a dry cleaner? Here's the honest version. This is not a growth business, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. It's a shrinking market with a brutal hidden liability buried, sometimes literally, beneath the surface. If you buy one, you need to know exactly what you're buying, the plant or just the counter. You need to run environmental testing on that ground like your financial life depends on it, because it might. And you need to be realistic that you're buying into an industry with fewer customers every year. But there's another way to see it. The competition is thinning out as weaker shops close, which means the survivors can capture more of a shrinking, but still very real market. It's a cash business that people, at least some people, will always need. And it's insulated from the one force reshaping the entire rest of the economy. A well-run cleaner in the right location that has already dealt with its environmental risk and adapted with pickup and delivery can still be a steady, durable, quietly profitable machine. That's the strange truth of the dry cleaner. It looks like the simplest business on the block, but it's really two businesses wearing a disguise, sitting on top of a potential toxic time bomb in a slowly shrinking market that also happens to be one of the safest places to hide from the robots. The clothes on the rack were never the whole story. What matters is the plant you can't see and the dirt you really hope is clean. If this changed the way you'll look at the dry cleaner on your corner, subscribe. We take apart the economics of one everyday business every week, and the numbers are never what you'd guess.